The UConn women going global in the recruiting game once again. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to take a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying the content, please take a second to subscribe and follow the audio versions wherever you listen. It really helps the show grow, and I truly, truly appreciate your support. Every follow, subscription, download, like, share, word of mouth, it all helps create more revenue for UConn NIL because Locked On UConn is likely the only podcast that donates 10% of their revenue to UConn's NIL efforts, in this case, Bleeding Blue for Good. By supporting this show, you're directly supporting the UConn athletic program and their efforts to secure funding in the NIL world. Thank you for being a part of this Locked On UConn community. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, we're going to bring in an international scout that we had to talk about, Blanca Quiñones, to talk about Gandy Malou Mamel. But to understand her journey is really an interesting aspect of her recruitment to UConn. We're gonna get into her measurables. Obviously, she's 6'5". She runs incredibly well. She's a powerful force in the front court that is going to be a nightmare for teams to cover. But basketball is full of stories where chance encounters change lives. And that's exactly what happened when Kieran Quinn first laid eyes on Gandy Malou Mamel. I've reached out to Kieran. I'm going to try to get him on the show because I'd love to hear about it in his own words. But Kieran is a former player on the Irish national team and a college basketball alum from Post University in Connecticut. He has spent countless years helping Irish players find opportunities in the United States. About 20 months ago, he was asked to watch a video of a player from Ireland. But it wasn't the player that caught his attention. Instead, he was captivated by a different player running up and down the floor, unmatched by her speed and agility. You guessed it, Gandy. Quinn recalls the moment was like a bolt of lightning. He said, "Who the hell is that?" And all I say was, he said, all he sees is that there's a player just going rim to rim in under 4 seconds, playing like a rim running 5, and it was an instinctual reaction. And I'm sure if you watch her film, you would 100% notice that. So he knew right away he was watching something special. Gandy's athleticism, her sheer ability to cover the court, and her determination were evident, even though those were just tiny glimpses into her game. He was watching the start of something extraordinary. At the time, Quinn had no connection to Gandy and needed to act fast because at that time, COVID restrictions made travel tough. So he reached out to Ruari Cronin, a player he'd helped place at the University of St. Joseph in Connecticut, our own Jim Calhoun coach there as well, to put Gandy through some drills. And the footage wasn't polished. Quinn described it as a hot mess, but the potential was clear as day. What he saw wasn't just a player. It was a young woman with the raw materials to become a serious contender in college basketball. So Gandy's path to basketball was unusual and kind of circuitous. But growing up in Ireland, where sports like soccer, rugby, traditional Gaelic games dominate, basketball is more of a niche pursuit. Not something that is, typical, right? Initially, she played soccer and everything changed in the 5th grade when a basketball coach visited her PE class. She was immediately hooked, captivated by the faster pace and the chance to move up and down the court freely. From that point on, basketball was her passion. At first, it was just for fun, but she played with local clubs, admitted to being shy on the court, focusing more on the running and the rebounding than shooting or playmaking. But by the age of 15, something inside her switched. She wanted something more than just a casual game. She wanted a career. But in Ireland, she quickly realized that opportunities were limited. Her club team didn't emphasize skill drills, so she knew she'd hit a ceiling at some point. So she knew she'd have to venture abroad. her quote, "I never really practiced dribbling outside of a scrimmage or a game," she explained. Gandy dreamed of coming to the United States, but didn't know how to get there. She had the drive, but needed someone to show her the way. Enter Kieran Quinn. After seeing her play, Quinn was determined to bring her to the States. He finally got to Ireland, met Gandy in person, and confirmed that she was everything he had seen on the video and more. Right there, he made up his mind to tell with this, "You're coming to America," he told her, but he was also honest about the challenges that would lay ahead. He didn't want her to think that it would be easy at all. Remember saying to her, "This isn't a joke. Coming here is hard. There's going to be a lot of hard days. Being away from family, etc." Gandy was undeterred. The tougher the road, the more determined she became. So I say all that to give a backstory of the woman that is Gandy Malou Mamel and her journey to the States and her journey to finding her career in basketball, in what will eventually be, a professional career. So before we bring in Alfred Corriette to bring him in to talk about Gandy, we'll dive into kind of her play style, ask questions about how she fits with UConn's motion offense, being a post player in the Gino Auriemma system. But before we get to him, I really want to take a moment and take a step back because the hurricane survivors that are in my adoptive state of North Carolina, I've partnered with AmeriCares. I've been making this joke all week, probably not in poor taste at all, that this graphic will cover my face, so you guys don't have to worry about seeing me, but just listen to me and see the graphic. If you can donate, great. I really want you guys to check out AmeriCares. They are, and I'm going to put on the graphic where you can actually donate. So there it is. AmeriCares is responding. This storm left a trail of destruction, destroying homes, businesses, everything that you can imagine. AmeriCares is a Connecticut-based company. It's on the ground, and it's going and helping the hardest hit communities, including those in Western North Carolina and Tennessee, restoring access to health services, delivering medicine, water, relief supplies, and really helping stand up health clinics and keep them open. So there's a long recovery ahead, but if you have the means, please donate. To learn more about AmeriCare's hurricane relief efforts or to donate, go to americares.org. You see the link here. There'll be a link in the description of the show as well. Really want to make sure that everyone understands how devastating this is, and likely the same thing with Floridians with Hurricane Milton. So if you can give, please do so. Let's take that off the screen. But back to Gandy before we get to Alfred. This decision couldn't have been hard. It couldn't have been easy. And it really wasn't hers to make. At 15 years old, her parents, Giselle and Yves, understood what it meant to seize this opportunity. Refugees from the Democratic Republic of Congo, they knew firsthand how a new country could offer hope and a future. So for them, it was a chance to support their daughter's dreams, just as Ireland had supported them when they needed a safe haven. So when they met Kieran Quinn, they trusted him, gave them their blessing, and they knew that this would be the right opportunity. Quinn too had to secure his family's buy-in by getting his wife involved. Quinn's daughter Sydney committed to the Navy, and both girls found in each other a training partner, which pushed them to be better. So that helped Gandy adjust to her new life. On paper, Gandy's stats are kind of pedestrian. 7.5 points, 6.9 rebounds, but they don't tell the whole story. She's 6'5" with a 7-foot wingspan. She has elite athleticism. She's an incredibly intriguing prospect. And listen to her interviews. She's so gregarious and lights up the room with her smile. I am so looking forward to UConn fans understanding her journey. And because I'm not doing it justice, I want to get Kieran on the show to kind of talk through it a little more. But let's get into the basketball aspect of things coming up after the break and really dive into what type of player Gandy is, and we'll go from there. What's up, everyone? UConn fans, don't miss out on the action as the Huskies take on Wake Forest. Not this weekend, next weekend. Remember, we're on a bye week. If you're looking for those last-minute tickets, you got time. Game Time is the way to go. It's the fastest and easiest way to grab seats for the big game with killer deals on tickets right up until kickoff. With Game Time's best price guarantee, you can rest easy knowing you're getting a great deal. Plus, the app shows you every view from your seat that you can imagine, and you know exactly what to expect. Don't worry about changing plans either. Game Time will 100% let you buy tickets last minute. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Get in the game with Game Time. All right, you're back. And so guess who else is back? Alfred Corriette. Really appreciate you dropping by to talk another international star in the making in Gandy Malou Mamel. Really want to get your take on her. The first question is, we'll go back to when you had you on for Blanca Quinones. How is she going to adjust and fit to this UConn system coming over from Ireland?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing with Gandy is, whereas like we talked about previously with Quinones, Quinones is coming from a primarily international background. Gandy's also had some experience playing high school ball here in the States. Yep. So she's a little bit adjusted to the American way of life, the American kind of schemes, American styles here that you may not necessarily get as much overseas. However, I think, with Gandy's game, I think, when you look at the size, when you look at the wingspan, when you look at the length, I think, Gandy kind of reminds me of like what you saw a little bit with Olivia Nelson-Ododa at UConn, in the sense of like what she can do there. But I think, with Gandy, it's like you're getting a very, I don't want to say raw, because she does have some skills, but I think you're getting a player that you can kind of mold into what you want her to be.
Okay. So to kind of use your comp, Olivia Nelson-Ododa, yeah, I can see that. I'm actually looking, I wanted to pull her official stats up. If Gandy turns into an all Big East first team, I think it would be a pretty solid recruit. I see that. Okay. And obviously in the NBA, is she still with the Sparks, or is she on a different team?
Ododa's with the Sun.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Listen. So specific skill sets, besides a comp, do you see aspects that set her apart from any of the other recruits that UConn has brought in? Or is there one specific skill set that you can hang her that you would hang your hat on to kind of say, listen, this is what Gandy does really well, and maybe we'll talk about weaknesses, but what are her strengths?
Yeah, so I think one of her biggest strengths is obviously her rebounding ability. If you watch the U20 Euros with Division B with Ireland, she was one of the top rebounders, actually, I believe third. She finished in the tournament because she just has a tenacity on the boards. Part of it is her athleticism, part of it is her length. But I think, when you have a big that can just rebound and, can really secure possessions for your team at that rate, you can never, pass on that. And then I think on the defensive end, a good shot blocker average roughly a block a game in the tournament. That is something that I think a lot of UConn fans would like. We've talked about before, one of the things that Gino hangs his hat on is the defensive side of things. So if you have a big that, can do the two things you expect out of every big, you really definitely going to have to bring that into your program.
So, with Janet Elfie being in the mix this year as a freshman, likely being there, I don't know what her plans are, if she was going to go pro early, but if she sticks around, you likely have someone that in Gandy that you don't need to come in and score because of Janet. So is that something that obviously she's going to be working on, is kind of polishing her offensive game?
Yeah, I think polishing her offensive game is definitely something UConn's going to want to do. Because, like Gandy really does, like from what we've seen so far, and especially overseas with the Euros and whatnot, Gandy has more of a traditional big game. Yep. I'm very curious to see like how her game evolves into more of a modern big game where, you're able to step out and shoot an occasional mid-range jumper. If she extends her game to the 3-point line, that could be even something that's, big time for UConn, to have a 6'5" big that's able to just do so many things. But I think where UConn has to have joy is the fact that you're going to get her from day one. This isn't like a prospect that you're getting maybe from a transfer that's already 1 year or 2 years, ready to go to the pros. You really have a chance to develop her the way you want her to be. And she already has the intangibles like the athleticism. She already has the defense. She already has so many things. She can do some things in the post. So I think it's really just a matter of finding, okay, how much do you want to round out her offensive game?
Let me ask you this one last question on Gandy. Do you feel like her biggest attribute, at least initially, is going to be, if you, I think you were on for a little bit of what I was talking when Kieran Quinn noticed her, it was her ability to get up and down the floor, in under like 5 seconds, rim to rim, getting her out in transition with the guards. You think she's going to be able to do that at this level coming in next year and kind of, I don't know, outlast or tire out some of these other centers that she's going to be playing up against in the post and just kind of run them ragged? I would imagine that would be Gino's initial tool for her as she learns to polish her offensive game, but probably getting some cheap buckets in transition.
Oh, most definitely. When I was looking at Gandy's game, it was really like her agility and her movement at 6'5". That was one of the things that stood out to me. Her ability to rim run, her ability to just get up and down the floor. Well, you talk about that transition game. I think, having a player like Gandy in that particular set was going to be very helpful for the UConn team. We saw a little bit of it in the Euros. If you look at the stats per synergy, she had just about 4% of her time in transition. But, I think Gino's going to want to tap into that a little bit more, because if you have a 6'5" big that can get down and, like you said, get those cheap buckets, I think that's going to very, very much help this UConn Huskies program. And then also just want to give a quick shout out to Kieran Quinn. I was here, listening to the story, have had the opportunity to chat with Kieran Quinn over text, from time to time, and just hear like some of the backstory of like why he wanted to bring Gandy over here and, him and his basketball background. So I think it's definitely good for Gandy to have someone like a Kieran Quinn in her corner.
Well, then if you would love, like for me, reach out to Kieran. We'd love to have him on the show. Would love to have a conversation around their relationship. And I mean, I'll do a whole show on him in talking about that relationship and how amazing it is, because it took a really big leap of faith for his family and her family to get her to the States and get her acclimated and then eventually she gets recruited to UConn. So it's an incredible all around human interest piece outside of basketball. Just a really cool story of people being wonderful at times and a lot of times people aren't very nice to other people in today's world. So really appreciate him and appreciate you as well. Let's take a break, and when we'll come back, I want to know who's next in Alfred Corriet's opinion. Who are some of the international prospects that UConn fans should keep their eye on? Maybe they don't come to UConn. Maybe they're just going to invade college basketball in the respect that these are going to be people that we have to face that are like a Blanca Quinones, but maybe we're going against them. And we'll talk about that coming up after this. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page that you actually place your bets. You'll get to start with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we're back with Alfred Corriet to talk about Gandy Malou Mamel and also who's next. We just had a great conversation around her game, her ability, what she's going to bring to UConn. I'm curious from your perspective, Alfred, who's next? Like who do you think, at least maybe in this class that's in the same class as Blanca and Gandy, that could come to UConn or are going to be playing against the UConn Huskies? I'm curious from your perspective, who's another big time star that is going to descend upon women's college basketball?
Well, one name I can think of that's going to be good or interesting to see, wherever she makes her decision. I know it's name we talked about previously, Agatha McKeer, seeing like what she can do coming from Canada. A 6'1" wing that can just create off the dribble like crazy, just very crafty, very athletic in her own right. Another play I'm interested to see, like whenever she makes a decision, is Ayla McDowell. So if you're not familiar with Ayla McDowell, she played for Brazil in some of their youth competitions, 6'2", also has a game similar to Agatha McKeer in the sense of, she can create off the dribbles, very crafty. And that's the thing that I think I'm surprised about with the international level is you're seeing so many players that have size but also have those guard skills like handling the ball, being able to dish, being able to create off the bounce. Just so many little things. Another Brazilian player that I can think of right now, more of a hybrid big, but Manuela Alves. She's right now in her recruiting process. There's a name, I think maybe a year or two down the line that also UConn fans are hoping land, Lara Samfai from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
She could definitely be big if she goes to UConn, 6'4", big body, can do so many things on the floor. I just think there's so much international talent out there that we're going to start seeing a lot of colleges just flock, just have so many talent, and we're seeing it on these top leaderboards.
Yeah, and obviously UConn is no stranger. They've done this for quite some time now. Most notably, or most recently, with Nika Mule, Leah Edwards, Dorka Juhas, to just name a few. What are your thoughts about why Gino likes to, and his staff likes to kind of cast this global net versus more traditional American athletes?
Well, one, I think it's just the development that you're getting with a lot of these overseas countries, because I think a lot of the development that you're seeing overseas is different to American styles of play. I think you're seeing players that are more complete, but I think, and I've talked about this in the previous episode, I think the biggest thing is structure. Players that aren't necessarily going to, I don't want to say cut corners, but players that are taught the game in a very particular way that I think fits what Gino's style is, and fitting that idea of you want to be just a sound player, not just the skill set, but also the mental aspect of it as well.
So if I'm deciphering that from just kind of having a little fun with it, we're talking about players that are gonna work on the fundamentals versus kind of horse around a little bit and do some things that I don't know if you've ever seen that. I think it's a video of, I think it was when Patrick Ewing was coaching Georgetown.
Oh,
and he said, when do you practice that?
When do you practice that shot?
When do you practice that shot? So I think that in a nutshell, that's what you're saying, is that you're getting players that in a game wouldn't just kind of break into a one-footed, Dirk Nowitzki fadeaway that they never practice. Is pretty much what you're saying, correct?
Exactly. You're going to get players that if they do break out a Dirk Nowitzki one-leg fadeaway, it's because they've practiced that since they were 10 or 12. That's a shot that's in their wheelhouse rather than a player that might take something uncharacteristic.
I know this is like kind of a grander question, and I didn't ask of this of the pre-show, but so take it for what it's worth. But why do you think that, and you could say this about a myriad of sports, so it's not just basketball, because myself, I was a professional tennis player. That was my background. Obviously basketball is my love, but I was actually best at playing tennis. International tennis is always, of the last 20, 25 years, better than American tennis, with the exception of some of the outliers like Serena and others. Why do you think that is on the basketball side, that you're getting more structure on the international level than, say, the American tutelage of coaches here in the States?
Yeah, I think it could be many things. I think it could be one, just the overall culture of overseas areas. Sometimes they like doing things a bit more methodological. Words slipping me, but it's more of a method than other places may have. But I think the thing mostly with the international game is they really like having a sense of completeness with players. It's not just you're going to have a player that's good at X or a player that's good at Y. You're going to have a player that's good at a little bit good at X, a little bit good at Y, a little bit good at Z. And I think that you realize that when you have players that understand the game in its totality and can be impactful in its totality, then you're just so much able to do things tactically. You're able to, plug and play players. You're able to get these particular schemes. You're able to get better fits. I just think it's that level of structure and that level of commitment to being great overall that I think that's why you see a lot of international teams focusing on that. And the reason why I bring up with Ayla McDowell and Alves with Brazil with the size and shooting is because you're talking about 6'2", 6'3", where traditionally in America you're thinking about that as maybe like a 4 or 5. But when you have a 6'2", 6'3" that can handle, but then also can post up and also can shoot and also can be impactful on the defensive end, you're seeing a player that now is just more of a threat on multiple levels than someone who maybe just cast as one or another.
That's an incredible explanation. All right, Alfred, thank you so much for being here. We are going to have you on again, especially if Agat McCord decides to commit to UConn. So would love to have you on again. And as I told you before, if you can get your buddy Kieran on, maybe we can have you both on and I'll do a segment with both of you. So again, really appreciate your time. That's Alfred. I almost called you Alfred again. See, I'm bad with my names. Always get me, man. It always gets me in trouble. Alfred Corriette from Her Hoop Stats, covering the Liberty and the WNBA and doing scouting breakdowns, international focus. Do us a favor again and tell us where to find all of your stuff. I have you at youtube.com/@AlfCorriette. Everyone can find your breakdowns there, correct? They won't subscribe, like, all that good stuff.
Yep, you can find breakdowns there. Like I said on the previous episode, YouTube is where I usually do more of the longer form content, where I usually go more deep dive into a particular player, where you'll see multiple things. You can also find me on Twitter, where I usually try to get you quick hits about a particular player, where you can get it in more of a digestible form day to day.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm Mark Zanetto for Alfred Corriette, asking you to stay locked on, stay connected. And remember, it's not just about getting it done. It's about doing it in a way that it can't be done any better. That's our goal every day. Go Huskies, as always.